Welcome to the Lead with Levity podcast. I'm Dr. Heather Walker, your host. And my question for you today is, have you ever gotten out there in front of an audience and you had to give a presentation and it didn't go so well? Maybe you didn't know the audience that well. Maybe you asked questions and there's silence. No one said anything. No one responded to you. Maybe you went into a presentation hoping that people would buy your book or sign up for something, or they would take some kind of action after your presentation, say yes to your request, and they didn't. And you thought, wow, that didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. Well, today we're going to hone in on different things that people do, faux pas, if you will, that get in the way of effective presentations. And our guest today is Fern Chan. She is the author of How to Not Suck at Presentations. And she's going to be going through some things that she's seen. I'll be sharing some things that I've seen. And then also talking through what are some ways that you can prepare yourself when you're going into a presentation, especially if you tend to get very, very anxious about these things. We'll both share some tips that we use to feel more comfortable getting in front of audiences. And I hope that by the end of this episode, you feel like, there's at least one thing that I can take away and that I can try and practice. Because honestly, this is a skill. This is a skill that we all have to develop. We don't pop out of the womb going, oh yeah, I've got PowerPoint and I've got my talking points and I've got this and I know how to prepare a compelling argument and a good hook and all the things, right? I know how to recap and summarize. Most of us do not pop out of the womb like that. It's something that we have to learn. So there's no shame in learning here. We are all on this journey together.
It's time for a sneak peek. Sneak peek, sneak peek.
You'd be surprised how people don't practice. They just think like, I'm just gonna pop on the slide and it'll be fine. But I'm like, oh, this is when you get those ahs, what do I say next? There's no smoothness in the transition. They don't have a final call to action, and so they just end their presentation and that's it, right? I'm like, oh my God, that did not even land or recap anything. So I always feel like, make sure that you have it fully thought out. Right? You prepare, that's like take your audience on a journey when you're presenting. I always think this is part of the storytelling as well, right? What's the beginning? What's the end? And the middle is like the juicy content, right? That shows you how we get to this point.
And now on with the show.
When you're feeling the pressure, take a moment to step back, pick up your marbles, and choose to lead with levity. Join us on the Lead with Levity podcast for fireside chats that will fill your bucket and help you get back to being the leader you were meant to be. Now here's your host, Dr. Heather Walker.
Welcome back to the Lead with Levity podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Walker, and I have the pleasure of having our next conversation that we're about to have is with Fern Chan. Fern is a presentation coach, a speaker. She is a best-selling author of a book called How Not to Suck at Presentations. And she's also the CEO and founder of Fern Chan Ventures, where she coaches business leaders, entrepreneurs, educators, consultants. She helps them effectively convey their ideas to make an impact with their message. Now, one thing that I absolutely enjoy about Fern is that she's an avid lifelong learner like myself. She's an educator with over a decade of experience in training adult learners. She actually left her 9-to-5 in higher ed, which I feel ya. I feel ya on that. To become a mompreneur. And she's passionate about creating a life on her terms so that she can spend more time with her family. She believes that moms are a force to be reckoned with, and we have an abundance of skills to be successful in business. She's also a shameless microphone hog at karaoke and a Star Wars nerd, which is a lot. That's a lot, Fern.
your audience, right? I'm like, okay, who's a mompreneur? Who's a mom? Who might be Star Wars nerds? And who likes to sing karaoke? All these sort of things that they're just little facts about me, but
you never know. You never know
who
who's going to
knows?
resonate with that. When I saw she loves karaoke, I thought, oh no. The last time I had to do karaoke, and I do say it, had to do karaoke. I think I went through multiple glasses. Let me not say that and sound crazy. Multiple glasses, yes, of wine just to get up there and get the mic and start singing, because that is not my jam at all. But I appreciate and respect anyone who can get behind the mic and get up in front of an audience of random people and just say, you know what, I'm going to sing my heart out. And it's going to be fine, no matter what. If it's good or not, we're doing this.
Yeah, I think that's part of the magic of it. The people who love it and just sing with heart and passion. They might be terrible singers. They might not be able to quite hit the note, but the crowd can get behind them, right? Because they can see that enthusiasm. And like some people like you might like, oh my God, I would never have the courage to get up there myself. They are rooting for you up there. So, I say that's okay if you hit the bum note, but just have fun. Life is too short for you to worry about what other people think about.
Which I think is perfect for our conversation, our topic that we're talking about today, which is how to make presentations and how to deliver presentations that don't suck, right? Because karaoke and getting up in front of a crowd to sing and do karaoke has similar challenges to getting up in front of a crowd and delivering a presentation. Yeah?
A part of it is stage presence, yes, to get up there and like can be very vulnerable too, right? To get up there and sort of bare your soul to the public if you are sharing expertise in one sense. But if you're singing your favorite song, which you nail in the shower, and you want to share that gift with the world, how can you make it enjoy the performance, right? So for me, when I tie these two things together, you sort of have to think about how do I want my audience to feel after I sing or when I sing, right? Is it so I can put a smile on their face? That's what up there when you're presenting in other ways, right? So for me, it's really important to sort of think that way too, but also just have fun. Because if the audience can see you having fun, and it's not just for singing, it's also presenting, they can get into it. But if you're up there and you're tentative and you're like ums and ahs and I'm not sure about myself, that's not going to inspire anybody to want to lean in to learn more.
How did you get started with this, teaching people about presentations?
So I did a lot of presenting myself, just based on the work that I did in higher education. So it sounds like you might have that same background, right? So I did a lot of training for one thing, and I was training a lot of law enforcement officers. And so I was teaching them skills that would help them deal with people in mental health crises. So if I can get you to use your communication skills in a way that will get that person to drop the knife or whatever, so they don't harm themselves and they don't harm you, so you can go home safe to your family, I want to make sure this lesson sticks. Right? You need to get across and you need to apply this, because it's so in that sense, it was a little bit of life and death. So there was a lot at stake there. So for me, I had to find a way for this lesson to stick, because if it doesn't, what happens when this officer is up there facing this situation and they don't know what to say to de-escalate the situation and decide to go for the weapon rather than their words, right? So what other tools can I give you? So for me, in that side of my profession, I was like, I got to make sure this works. I got to make sure this is engaging, that they get it, right? So that was one side of it. But then I would be presenting at these conferences and I'm like, boy, there's so much good content, but people are falling asleep. Right? It'd be just screens and screens of bullet points. As educators, a lot of us are researchers, so we love to share 20 years of knowledge into all these slides, and all you get, unfortunately, like a read along, right? This is not kind of karaoke by your presentation. You don't want your audience to read along with you, because they no longer listen to you if they're trying to read that 10-point font that you put on the screen up there. So for me, it's like, there's got to be a better way to get our message across in a way that's not going to overwhelm. Once your audience gets overwhelmed, they get bored, they tune out, and you're going to have a much harder time getting them back. You want to hit them hard up front, so they're going to go lean in and go, oh my God, tell me more. Right. So that for me is like how I want to engage my audience. You got to get them early, right up front, and make them feel something. So they go, oh, yes, that's me. Right. Because people react when they feel something. You all know the Maya Angelou quote, right? People don't remember what you
That's
said,
right.
but they remember how you made them feel. So make them feel something right off the bat when you're opening your presentation. And for the love of George, don't say, my name is so and so, and I'm going to tell you about this. Which
And
is what
that's
a
what
lot of
they
people do because it's
expect.
like conventional wisdom.
Yes.
Yep. Who I am, who am I, what do I do? Rather than open up with something like, did you know that 1 in 10 people, you can give them like some shocking statistic, like the average person spends like 150 hours just unlocking their phones. Imagine that for one moment. And then the crowd's gonna go, 50 times a day, that's not possible. But they're now thinking, you've got their attention.
Right, exactly.
So I think always starting with something that's a little bit more unorthodox, like a story, a fact, or something to get people's attention before you tell them who you are and what you do. Because at that point, they don't know you. They kind of don't care.
How important it is to make sure that you're hooking the audience with a thought-provoking question, something, a provocative statistic, a story of some kind, not starting with, this is who I am, these are my credentials, don't you care? No, you don't. Yes.
Yeah, I always say to presenters, right? You always have to think about your audience's favorite radio station, which is WIIF. What's in it for me, right? What's in it for your audience to want to care, right? I don't know if you're allowed for swear words, but like, what do they give a about, right? So why would they want to listen? Because self-interest is such a high motivating factor. If this information is not going to help me thrive and survive, then I'm not going to listen. So make sure it's something that them that go, oh God, that's me. So you, in that sense, when you put out that statistic or that shocking thing, or even a statement that may be controversial.
Yes.
Right? It's going to make people at least wake up because they're going to go, oh, that's not, that doesn't quite sit right. Just like I have this title of my book, How to Not Suck at Presentation. It's a bit of a slap in the face, but it gets your attention, right? I don't want to suck.
Right,
you don't want
exactly.
to suck, but to read the book, right? So what is it rather than how to improve your presentation skills? Is it what I'm writing about? Yes. But does it get someone's attention? Heck no. So what is the one thing that you can put out that they go, how many of you suck at presenting? And then people will say yes or no. And then instantly you're going to get audience engagement because they will raise their hands. People will self-identify. And once you see that, that is audience interaction right there. And now you know you have an audience who's listening.
Ooh, so you've asked your audience how many of you suck at presenting? And
well, I don't phrase it so harsh. I sort of say, like, how many of you have suffered through death by PowerPoint, listening to presenters, That is like, and then I say, and how many of you have delivered such presentations? Right?
Yes.
So it's a little bit more softball. You got to know your audience. You can't just hit them hard and go, oh my God, this woman is calling me
we just
out,
met. Really, we just met.
Right. I'm like,
So what are some of the sort of like, oh no, cringe-worthy activities, moments, behaviors that you see people do when they're giving presentations?
Well, reading from the slides is one. When they have like multiple bullet points and they just read off verbatim, right? Yeah. Thankfully, I don't see too much of that these days, but there's still a fair few. And it shocks me how keynote speakers sometimes at big conferences do this. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're putting all your knowledge up there on bullet points and you're reading it off line by line. That always, because it's overwhelmed. It's like a dump, right? A little information dump that you think you're giving your audience, but they're not listening. And, God forbid your slides go down. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Exactly. What do you recommend instead? A picture or something like this?
Yeah, I like to use full bleed images. If you're going to use a picture, because, it's true about the adage, right? A picture is worth 1,000 words. So put up something arresting that tells the story so visual storytelling is so important in terms of like, what do people see and what stories can they tell from that? Because it's also a cue. It gives them an idea about what you'll be talking about. But because you're narrating, they're looking at the picture and tying those conclusions together rather than reading off the slide, right? I mean, there are some things that require some text. And in that case, I would say, listen, just reveal one point and talk about it. And then reveal your next line of text if you have to. But don't do it all at once, where then it's really hard for the person to stay focused on what you're saying. So if you do it like a show and reveal as you go, if you do have to have very complex text or jargon, that's something that explains the concept, right? Then I say show and tell, but keep it like one point at a time, one idea per slide.
I've seen that as well. And sometimes having the picture up and then following that up with a point that goes over the picture or a quote or what the key takeaway is so much more powerful than them having every single point on the slide. What else have you seen?
You know what, this was interesting because I was just at a tech event this past Friday, and I was there to sort of present my book and promote my book, and I was thinking all these people who are going up there to pitch, I wonder how they'll do it. So I was just observing from the back, and because it's a tech conference, a lot of them had very technical information to share. And unfortunately, their audience may not be as tech savvy, right? So much of it goes over the audience's head. So I think one of it is also like understanding who your audience is, to be able to like, how can you boil down some of these things into 3 key points? But again, right, they all did the same. My name is so-and-so. I work for this company and this is what we do, versus starting off with just like a storytelling technique by saying, imagine what your life could look like if you use this product and got to say 300 hours worth of productivity in a week, right? Would you like to know more?
Wow.
Of course, I want to know more.
It's a huge difference.
Rather than say, my name is I work for this tech company and this is what we do. Like, okay, but when you say like, do you want to say 300 hours of your time? Because we have a solution to that, because we have something that you can access in your back pocket that's going to cut out a distraction and whatever. Again, I'm just making things up, but that is something that people can relate to, right? The pain of like getting distracted by digital things, and the fact that you might have something that will help me be more focused in this tech-driven app world. Ironically, another app. Then I want to know more about it. But I've now just gotten more interest than say everybody who had a slide that explains a lot of data. That's a lot of data. I saw a lot of data, but it was so small in the print. I'm like, oh boy, I'm the back row and I can't see any of it. So I appreciate that it was really beautifully laid out. But if I can't see the legend and I can't see what those key indicators are, I'm like, what the hell am I looking at? So that's a danger when you're producing, when you're presenting numbers as well. I get that it can tell a compelling story, but then give the compelling story, right? Tell me what these numbers mean behind the data, how it can impact that one life, and how you can make it relate to me as a consumer, as a user, and how my life will be better for it. And I think that's where they miss a little bit of that, because it's like all the wonderful tech things and the technology, this and that. I'm like, sometimes people don't care. Just like people don't care how the car works. They just want to get to like the destination, right? The end user wants the benefits in that sense, but they don't want to know how the machinery works.
I know I've seen this faux pas a lot, especially with leaders who are sharing data to their teams. So like a town hall meeting, for example, and they're casting all of this financial data or data around the product and delivery and all of this stuff. And they're making lots of assumptions that people can see it. They understand what all of the terms mean. They're just showing a lot of charts and graphs. And I've sat through so many presentations that were so terribly boring because I didn't really know what they were talking about. So yes. Have you any strategies that really work well when it comes to presenting data? It would be a good idea to maybe relate it to a real life story or something that everyone can connect to, or comparing it to, hey, did you know that when we sell 10 products a day, it's almost like we're doing this, like comparing.
Yeah. I feel like with numbers, sometimes it can be very abstract. So how can we tie it to something a bit more concrete that we can feel, right? Again, and this is where I also think storytelling with data is so powerful, especially if you can say, you know what, rather than the numbers, is there a story behind this number? Like, what, so-and-so, and I I did this as an example with a group I'm working with, and they're up for a grant renewal, and they need to show like the effects that they've had with their clients. And it's like, rather than just show me all these graphs, why don't you say, so and so in this program, before he came in, was earning whatever the minimum wage was. But after he completed our program, he was able to earn this much more money and all of that. So now you've just given that data so much more dimension because it's a real person. And you can see like the increase in his wages that now enables him to earn more money to provide for his family. And he's now in this whatever. So what is that leap, the transformation from the before and after that now makes me care more of the numbers rather than the, oh, look, we were able to show this, but it's so much more personal and impactful when you can see a person, right? Put the picture of the person up there to say, hey, this is so-and-so who was a single mother and to wake up so early in the morning to do all these things before she even took care of herself and got herself to work and all of that, all this to provide for her family, earning a minimum wage. But then when we were able to give her XYZ resources in our program and all that, she's now able to do this. And this is the power, how you can show your data, right? Tie it to something that's a success story because people relate to numbers. Data sell, data tell.
Yes, very true,
story
very
sell.
true. Yeah. Data tells, stories sell. So let's apply this to another realistic scenario. Now, I shared something with you beforehand. I don't know if you had an opportunity to take a look at it. If not, it's okay. I'll go through this scenario real quick, and then we'll see how might we be able to help this person as they're thinking about how they can present their case to their manager. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, Fern. So meet Emma. Emma's an intern who recently joined an event planning company. And as you may or may not be aware, event planning companies tend to have high work demands, long hours, especially as you get closer and closer to the events. You want to make sure that everything is going well. And this new job, she's really excited about it. She wants to show that she can do good things and she's a valuable team member, all of that. But it is a little bit farther away from home. So her commute is like an hour, hour there, hour back. So that's where she's at. And for Emma is noticing in her new job that even though her manager says, oh, I want you to care about your self-care and make sure you're going home on time and all of these things, like saying all the right words, Emma is looking around and noticing no one is doing that. Everyone is working around them, staying in the office. She doesn't want to come across as not dedicated, but at the same time, she has an hour-long commute, so she has to be very careful about how she spends her time. How would you recommend that Emma maybe starts to think about how she might present her case to her manager?
Ooh, it's one of those things where it can cut both ways, right? I think on the messaging on leadership, there's no congruency. What they're saying is not reflecting what they're doing. So it's like, it's a mismatch in the management of expectations. So I would probably, from Emma's point of view, try to get how to manage the expectations, right? I noticed that this, or I would say, I value working for a company that puts the emphasis on well-being and all of that stuff. And that's one of the things that drew me into working to this company, the fact that you place the emphasis on our well-being. And so you can say, and because my hour-long commute takes me out to these places, I need to get home at a time that I feel safe. And so I don't feel like I can put in these long hours all the time, right? Unless there's some accommodation that can be made. Maybe I can get a car service. I'd be more than happy to stay later if I know that I can get home safely. That's, I think, one way you can, if she wants to do that, right? She can easily also have the boundaries to say, hey, respect my time and boundaries. But as an intern, I feel like not many people have power to do that. So how can we set up that conversation in a way that positions her to say, I appreciate that. So I would hearken back to what the company says. So they're reminded, you said you place an emphasis on this, and I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page, that there's alignment of values. I understand that being that we are in this world of event planning and things can get really, where the pressure might ramp up, I'm more than happy to take on some later hours, but I just need some guarantees and get home safe. right? Because if you value that in me, I just want to make sure that I know you'll appreciate where I'm coming from. So I would set it up that way. To this way, then you'll get to show that you're a team player, but also then call them out a little bit on their values.
That's true. And one thing that's really cool about what you just did, and I'm bringing it back to presentations as well, is sometimes with a presentation, you might want to give people the real raw truth. And then sometimes you want to focus on aspirational, something visionary, something that gets them excited. And, oh yeah, remember why you joined this organization. Maybe you forgot about that at some point.
Yeah.
So when would you decide, okay, this is an audience or this is a time in the presentation when I'm going to give the real raw truth, and this is a time when I'm going to maybe focus on all of the warm fuzzies and getting people to get really excited about what's possible?
I think it can be part of the same story, right? Because I think what people want to see sometimes is the transformation. So sometimes you can make your message. I always say, like, I did not start out as a best-selling author and a top presenter. No, I sucked at presenting. It's part of the story, right? I used to do death by PowerPoint, and I would see my audience falling asleep and my students falling asleep, and it crushed me. It's one of those things that is like, oh my God, I've just wasted this person's time, my time, and that just sucks all the confidence out of you. I don't want to feel that, and I don't want you to feel that, right? So what is the pain that you experience that you've helped overcome? So I don't think it's a bad thing to sometimes show that vulnerability, because when you're vulnerable and you've also shown that you've been there, you create more empathy, right? Nobody likes the hero so much because it's like, well, you know,
special.
You can do it because you're like this, da 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 da. I'm like, oh, we all. I'm not special. I sucked. I worked at it to get to a point where I'm less sucky, and I want to share those secrets with you so you too can be a badass at this. But it's like anything else, it's a skill that can be developed. And here are the things that I tried that worked for me, that's worked for other people, and I know this can work for you too.
So along that line, what have you tried that has helped you maybe the most?
Not being afraid to make a mistake. And I think that's the big thing, right? Being okay, even if I stumble on stage. I occasionally go blank too. I can go up there and go, I've done this so many times, but sometimes I just have a moment where it's a brain fart. It does happen. Or when the tech gremlins take over and you're like looking at the screen and nothing's up there, and you're thinking, oh gosh, what now? And then you have to pivot, right? You got to make those decisions. The show must go on. So have the confidence to know that I am a subject matter expert. I know this. I can just share this information with the people in a way that's not going to be on the slide. And it's okay, because I can just now have a conversation with you. So I think owning your own abilities is one thing, but know your subject well enough that should anything go wrong, you're okay to go on without your slideshow and just be able to present. Knowing it well enough, right? So yes, but yeah, own your message. Don't beat yourself up. You make a mistake. We're all human. I think the audience will enjoy that little giggle with you and go, ooh, even the best of the best.
This is true. All kinds of brain farts all the time. Yes.
Relatability, right? It grows connection. Because if I was like, oh my God, that would be me up there too. And then you'll just get a bit more grace from the audience as well. Like sometimes I even call people, I'm like, are you on your phone? Like, not listening to me? Unless of course you're going to be tweeting about this on social media about how awesome this presentation is. Go ahead. But if not, can I have your attention, please? Thank you.
Yeah.
Call them out.
So not being afraid to fail, were you given freedom to fail, or is that something that you had to sort of take for yourself?
Yes, I took it. I think we sometimes place impossible barriers on ourselves by trying to be perfect. Right? One of the mantras I teach my children to is like, progress over perfection. Practice makes progress, right? Practice makes progress, because it's okay to not be perfect. Because when you put that on yourself, the immense pressure, we beat ourselves up plenty, right? For the smallest things. We don't need to do this to ourselves. So I say, were you able to go out there and share your genius with the world? Did your audience respond? Do they care what you look like if your hair was a little out of place? No. Did they enjoy it? Did they lean for it? Did they give you information? Did you see them smile at the end and you felt you made an impact? Yes. And that's all.
Yes. And with the time that we have left, I'd like to help everyone who's interested in getting better and better about presentations, like the actual prep for being up there, because as you know, public speaking is right up there with the fear of death. Right? Yes.
Oh,
I know
I
personally one trick that I've used that has helped me again and again and again is to recognize that telling yourself to calm down does not work. It's those feelings are only going to grow and grow, and that voice in your head that says, "Oh, you see, that didn't work." All those negative messages, that gets stronger. So
Yep.
I know personally one thing that has helped me before I go on stage is to remember and tell myself, okay, the day before, okay, tomorrow you're going to feel like you're anxious, you're going to feel stressed out, you're going to feel all of these things. But guess what? It's so close. Anxiety and stress and nerves, there's a feeling, a positive feeling that's very similar to that. Fern, you know what it is? Anticipation.
Yeah.
Yeah, anticipation and excitement. So don't confuse all of those feelings for you don't have it. No, those feelings are anticipation and excitement. So when you start to feel this, Heather, know that you're getting ready to share what you have to offer with them. And that's a gift. That's a beautiful thing that you're about to do. So that has helped me to say, okay, what I'm feeling right now, I'm interpreting this as anticipation. What has helped you?
I think that's a really good way to think of that, right? So for me, I reframe, like, I speak on stages all the time, but every time I go on, just before, I still get butterflies in my stomach. But I think that's good, because if you're not excited or nervous a little bit, it just shows that, like, you know, it might be getting too stale for you. So for me, I reframe and think, you know what? All these butterflies, all those little tingly things is just the good juju waiting to come out into the world. And that's all there is. You know, it's all of this energy waiting to be dispersed. And that's what I'm doing with my words, with my knowledge, sharing all of this in whatever form. Even if it stumbles a little bit, it's okay. That's what it is. I mean, the way your body is it's just telling you something, right? It's a signal that says, hey, you're feeling a bit of this. Don't resist it. Don't deny it, because what you resist will persist, right? So just own it. Just say, oh, I am feeling a little tinkly on all these butterflies. It's just a good juju waiting to get out into this world. That's all. Because what you believe is right or what you believe is wrong, either way, you're right. Whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, as Henry Ford said, you are right. So you might as well believe you can do it. Right?
Oh, Fern, you've got all of the quotes just stored up.
A little bit.
You do. Yes. And so your subconscious will actually take whatever you give it. It's not going to filter. It's not going to say, no, that's not right. Yep. Yes, that's right. No, whatever you tell yourself, your subconscious will take that as law and will move forward based on that. So what you said is so true. And that's why it's so important that we be very, very thoughtful about what we're telling ourselves.
It's true.
Because we're with us all the time, right? And if you wouldn't say unkind things to the effect that could have on them,
I'm going to imagine
why would you do
smiling
that
faces when I see all these excited people leaning in because they're interested. Hands are going to go up when I say that. Are there any questions? And boom, they're all going to come up because it's going to be so interactive, so much fun. Time's going to go by. We're not even going to know what happened. And that'll be the end of that. And then it's going to feel amazing. So you got to say that to yourself. You got to picture it. You got to see, like, what would it look like? Because in your mind, it's like, oh, I already know this is going to pass. This is how it will look like and feel. And you carry that energy with you and you go out there and you kill it.
Yeah. So let's use these tips for people.
I do have one more. Let me just put this in before I forget. It's what I call the 5 Ps, right? Proper preparation prevents poor performance. There's a bit of a tongue twister. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. So rehearse.
I've heard
practice.
this.
Practice saying what you're going to say out loud. It's no good if you say it in your mind, because you never know what words will trip you up if you don't have your proper preparation to prevent poor performance. So, you know, say things out loud, right? You never know, because we all say things in our mind, but then when we open our mouths and say it, and like, gosh, that sounded funny. That didn't, like, you know, I didn't imagine it sounding the way that it did. But also time yourself. If you don't say it out loud, you don't know how long it's going to take for you to actually say it. and then you run out of time. So that's another thing. It helps to verbalize your thoughts, what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, so you know how long it will take you to get through what you're going to present.
That's a really good point. And I see people get tripped up on that when they start to bring out stories. So maybe they practiced with their regular presentation, but then they knew that they wanted to insert some kind of a personal story of some kind. And before you know it, that story just has so much context that they've run way over time. So I add to what you just said, practice your stories as well, because you have no idea what you want to share until you open your mouth, and you don't know how long it's going to take. Fern, thank you. So to summarize for everyone, we're talking hooking people at the very beginning, right? Making sure that you're sharing stories and case studies and something provocative.
Yes.
Preparing for this so that you're ready to go.
Yes, you'd be surprised how people don't practice. They just think like, I'm just gonna hop on the slide and it'll be fine. But I'm like, oh, this is when you get those ahs, what do I say next? There's no smoothness in the transition. They don't have a final call to action, and so they just end their presentation and that's it, right? I'm like, oh my God, that did not even land or recap anything. So I always feel like, make sure that you have it fully thought out. Right? You prepare, that's like take your audience on a journey when you're presenting. I always think this is part of the storytelling as well, right? What's the beginning? What's the end? And the middle is like the juicy content, right? That shows you how we get to this point. So.
Nice. So Fern, if people are interested in learning a little bit more about you, picking up how not to suck at presentations, any other tools, where should they go?
They can go to my website at fernchan.com. I always say it's Fern like the leaf and Chan like Jackie. If you all know who Jackie Chan is, you'll get it. You'll be surprised how many younger people might not get that reference. But yes, fernchan.com. I have some free resources there where you can pick up what I call my PowerPointers. So these are like some 8 PowerPointers that you can use to up your presentation skills. I also have free webinars that I host. And I have a coaching program if you're interested. So by all means, go check out fernchan.com and follow me on my Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and I'm going to give Heather all those links so she can put it in the show notes so you can all follow me and get all the presentation tips that I love to share with my audience.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing all of these tools and tips.
Oh, it was so much fun. Thank you for having me on your show, Heather.
Awesome.
Thanks for tuning in to the Lead with Levity podcast. To get resources mentioned in this episode and find out what we're all about, check us out at leadwithlevity.com.